The Board of Education workshop for July 15th of 2020 is called to order. And Wichita Public Schools will be the district of choice in our region where all students and staff are empowered to dream, believe, and achieve. My name is Julie Hedrick. I'm Vice President of the Board of Education, and we welcome you, everyone who is here, staff that is joining us socially distanced, and those of you who are joining us online. I failed on Monday to have all board members introduce themselves, so I'm remembering to do that today. So we'll start with Ben and go around the circle here, and then we'll have those board members that are joining us via teleconference and introduce themselves as well. So Ben?
Ben Blankley, District 1.
Ernestine Crable, District 3.
Mike Rohde, District 5.
Ron Rosales, District 6.
Sean Rickser, District 4, joining remotely.
Cheryl Logan, at large, joining you remotely.
Alicia Thompson, Superintendent.
Thank you all for joining us today, and I'm going to turn the meeting over to Dr. Mike, who has a statement to read to us.
Good afternoon. I am Mike Willamy, Clerk of the Board. The meeting today is a workshop meeting. The only subject to be discussed by the board today is learning options, details of educational options that will be available to students. No binding action will be taken at today's meeting. It will be a discussion-only meeting. Based on health and safety concerns due to COVID-19, the media and public will not be attending this meeting in person. This meeting is available to be viewed and or listened to by the following means: WPS TV on Cox Channel 20, www.usd259.org/WPS TV online, and live stream apps for phone, Roku, and Apple TV by searching the term WPS-TV. Board members, staff, and others will identify themselves before they speak at today's meeting. Ordinarily, members of the public may attend workshop meetings. However, members of the public do not actually participate in workshop meetings. The public will not participate in today's workshop meeting. Following the conclusion of today's meeting, a recording of the meeting will be available to be viewed on Wichita Public Schools' YouTube channel. Today's topic is Future Ready Return to School Plan, Learning Options.
Good afternoon, board members. I guess I should say long time no see. It's good to see you all with your masks on. You look wonderful. As I stated Monday's workshop, I will do so again today and say, mask up. If there is one simple act that each and every one of us can do to create the safest possible environment for our return to school in August, that would be to wear your mask. Many people have asked me what they can do to help and support schools during this difficult time. 3 simple words sum it up, and I will say it once again: wear your masks. I want to remind you that what you will hear today as we discuss our academic learning plan and what we will hear on Friday regarding safe and healthy work and learning environments is not final. I repeat, what we are sharing with you today is not our final plan. We wanted to take these workshop opportunities to discuss with our elected leaders and share with our stakeholders in order to review, discuss, and receive additional feedback. There has been so much shared in the last several weeks about guidelines and recommendations for students and staff returning to class this fall. We spent a lot of time working with Cedric County Health Department, and we are so appreciative of Adrian Brine and Dr. Menz and others who are all helping make the best possible plans to support our students. Mr. Rohde, we should have some answers to your questions you asked yesterday from Dr. Menz to present to you at our meeting on Friday. And of course, the Kansas Department of Education will stand this afternoon with Governor Kelly and share our state's plan for education this fall. We are reading, and we are learning, and we are evaluating all of these recommendations constantly. And we are building a plan based on facts and the best possible evidence available at the time, which I might note has and will continue to change. When we bring you our plan on July the 20th for WPS 150th year of public education, it will be the best possible plan we can offer as of July the 20th. But it's important to know that we will continue to ask, listen, and learn, and monitor, and we will be prepared to pivot if circumstances require us to modify our plan based on new evidence or public health considerations. This is worth noting again. We do anticipate changes in guidance and circumstances over the time, but we will be prepared to adapt and respond. I can't emphasize enough how important it is that we go in today's presentation and into the school year with the key themes of patience, flexibility, and grace are in the forefront of our minds. This is hard work, and we need to practice those three themes. To all of our employees, I thank you, I commend you, and I stand with you in this difficult journey. And now I am honored to turn the mic over to our amazing academic leaders, Dr. Tiffany Irving, Gil Alvarez, Michelle Ingenthron, Vince, where are you, Vince? Dr. Vince Evans is over there, as well as Fabian Armendariz, our Division Director of Operations. So with that being said, we're ready to hear this wonderful plan as we move forward.
Well, thank you. This is Tiffany Irving speaking. Dr. Thompson has already introduced our team that is sharing with you. Mr. Armendariz will be coming to the podium to share some of his remarks. Dr. Evans is sitting in the audience, and although he's not co-presenting, he will be available to answer questions from the perspective of how Student Support Services has been a part of this planning process. And so today, we are here to provide you updates around the planning process, which has led to learning model options that we have planned and are prepared to implement if needed this fall, and the timeline moving forward. And so as we continue to think about what has happened and what final recommendations we will have on July 20th, I want to begin by talking about the planning process. This has been quite the puzzle. It has included many parts that are really coming together to flesh out what we believe is going to be the best recommendation for this moment moving forward to be able to plan for our students and staff returning to school. This work actually started back in April with our task force. And this task force came up with recommendations of possible school return scenarios, and they posed questions and things that we needed to problem solve around in order to be able to come up with a final plan. Our pandemic team, which really is the district crisis team, has taken those recommendations. We have been working with others, including collaborating with our peers who are in like positions in districts across the nation. We have spent ongoing time analyzing our survey data from both our staff as well as our parents. We have had regular consultation with health professionals, as Dr. Thompson just indicated, and we really have been digging in deeply, looking at what are best practices to our individual roles that we have and the work that we do that we should consider as we create this plan for Wichita Public Schools. And then, of course, we must include KSDE guidelines, which I think I heard right before coming in here that they have approved their plans, and so we will be spending the next couple of days digging deeper into that to make sure it is embedded within the plans that we bring to you on July 20th. And then I must acknowledge and just give a shout out to our task force. I mentioned that this group started meeting back in April, and this is the group that reflected upon our phase 1 work and identified what were the strengths in that work that we did, as well as things that we would need to do differently and better if we needed to move into a remote learning opportunity in the future. This team also provided us what end up being 3 possible scenarios that we presented to you on June 30th. This team had a core group of members that then went out and worked with smaller groups. But what's so great about this particular work group is that it is comprised of both classified as well as certified staff from across our system at all levels. And again, on June 30th, we described 3 scenarios that team helped us come up with. It included on-site, hybrid blended. Hybrid is sometimes referred to as a blended model, and remote, which is very similar to what we had in place during our phase 1, and on-site. And so we described those 3 scenarios at our June 30th meeting. At that time, we also shared data from our parents and staff on their preference on what hybrid should look like if we had to pivot to that blended type of approach. And I'm sorry, my mask, every time I speak, keeps sliding off. And so if our public health causes us to make a shift to a scenario like a hybrid, we would be prepared to do that. We've been planning that in the background, as well as we also have been planning as if we needed to go to a full remote, what would need to occur in order for that to happen. So those are 2 scenarios that we did share an overview on June 30th that we would be prepared to implement if needed. But the learning models that we're actually going to describe for you today captures what we have learned from our surveys from our staff and our our staff and our families. Our families and staff both expressed that they want students in the classroom if we are able to implement health and safety guidelines. We also learned from the survey data that some families want an option to continue online learning. And so the learning models that we're going to share with you today, we are prepared to be able to implement this fall, include on-site, which is in-person learning, My School Remote, which is a type of online learning, and our Education Imagine Academy, which is our virtual school for K-12. And so we're going to describe these in depth, but on-site is our students and staff returning physically to our buildings, and you started hearing on Monday some of the guidelines that others have been working on related to safety and health guidelines, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of those today. What we'll describe today in more in depth with My School Remote is an opportunity for students to remain enrolled at their neighborhood or magnet school, but yet receive online instruction. And then third is EI Academy, which is short for Education Imagine Academy, and this is a full virtual school. It's not just a program, it is a school of its own. It is for students that want that flexibility in what scheduling looks like, as well as individualized pacing learning. And so to begin our discussion around on-site, this is an open campus. Our doors open so our students and staff can return physically to our buildings. It operates with regular school schedules and a regular bell schedule, and protocols and plans have been designed to enhance the health and safety in each of our buildings.
Michelle Ingenthrone. Planning for social distancing, oh, I'm sorry, I think it just kicked on. Michelle Ingenthrone. Planning for social distancing has been paramount for our reopening, and there are many details that we have planned to support schools with our reopening. We'd like to go over a couple of those with you today. Signage and visual aids. We have probably any detail that you can think of where we would need signage for directions we are developing and will have to our buildings. When it comes to expectations for face coverings, our expectation is that all staff members will wear face coverings, and we will determine the type of face coverings that will be worn by students at each level based on guidelines from Sedgwick County and the City of Wichita. We have guidelines established for all the common areas, both at elementary and secondary, which would include not having assemblies or mass gatherings in our buildings the first semester. We have guidelines for hallways, restrooms, and our buses. Some of the things that we are thinking about and are implementing where it's feasible would be one-way traffic when possible in our hallways, staggered passing periods or time in the hallways at the elementary buildings. Again, mass gatherings would be in compliance with county ordinances, although assemblies we're not going to do that first semester. Elementary, we are going to cohort isolation groups and have our classrooms cohorted in isolation as much as possible. And our secondary schools will customize plans to eliminate those large gatherings of students, as you can imagine, in the hallways and the common areas. When it comes to health and hygiene, we have plans that we have developed around that as well. Lesson plans have been and continue to be developed by Learning Services, our health and PE department, to ensure that our teachers have those lesson plans, students are being taught, and of course then our signage to remind kids as they're around their classroom and in the building. Hand sanitizing stations will be easily accessible and located throughout our buildings. And we are going to encourage no community supplies. When you think of elementary, you often think of sharing crayons and pencils. Each student will have their own supplies, and we will not have those tubs for social sharing any longer. I do want to reiterate some of these points that Luke made on Monday. Staff will be provided disinfecting kits, which will include cleaning supplies, the hand sanitizer, and masks, and those items will be used to clean those touch point surfaces throughout the day as needed. We are increasing the cleaning of water fountains throughout the day and encouraging students to bring their own reusable bottles. The screening process, the contact tracing, and custodial initiatives will remain the same as Luke described earlier. We are also limiting non-essential visitors coming into the building, which Terry addressed with you on Monday as well.
I apologize, should have been more prepared. Good afternoon, President Logan, Vice President Hedrick, Superintendent Thompson, members of the board. I'm here to talk a little bit about nutrition services and transportation. As we continue, I first want to acknowledge David Paul, our director of the department, as well as the rest of the team who have worked collaboratively to build these plans. I also want to recognize our nutrition services department. They really are the only department in the district that has continued to work through the last few months. And over the last few months, we've served almost 700,000 meals since we started. Can you hear me a little bit better? Is that better? Okay. Okay. Will do. So we want to thank, again, the Nutrition Services Department, as they have served almost 700,000 meals over the last few months. What's included in this presentation today has been drafted in collaboration with Learning Services, as well as our elementary and secondary office. So this has been a very collaborative effort, and I'm really grateful to our district for taking that direction, including operations as part of the planning. As we get into what our planning is, I want to make clear that Our planning is not finalized yet. We got that guidance from KSDE today, and we're going to be looking through those plans to make sure that we are aligned. Just some quick things that we're looking at. We are looking at implementing a quick serve menu for breakfast and lunch, similar to a grab and go that kids are going to be able to pick up and take and eat at different locations. We're also going to be eliminating our choice or salad bars at our schools to eliminate the contamination and the virus. We're also going to be eliminating a la carte to make sure that kids are not congregating in those spaces. We're looking at staggering lunch periods at our different schools and whenever possible. In all of our schools, we're processing as we look at what that looks like. We will be posting signage to encourage social distancing as kids are picking up their meals. We're also going to be utilizing other locations for kids to eat. So we are not going to be congregating in the cafeterias. At the elementary level, we're looking at students picking up meals and eating in the classrooms. And that's a similar process that we have at a couple of schools already. So we're looking at replicating some of that. At the secondary level, we're looking to make meals available in the cafeteria and at carts located throughout the building. As you know, we've implemented a lot of second chance breakfast opportunities for our students. We'll be able to make use of those carts through different areas of the buildings. So kids are picking up meals at different locations, and then they're able to eat elsewhere and not congregate in the cafeteria. So those are a few of the pieces that we're implementing in regards to nutrition services. As far as transportation goes, and Lisa Riveros and her team, our director, have been doing a lot of research in regards to how we can best as possible safely provide this service to our community. As you all know, we have a limited number of buses available to us, so as much as social distancing in many ways is not fully possible in all of our buses. And because of that, we are looking at implementing masks being required for all students, all bus riders, and all monitors at all times. As far as bus drivers go, they are going to be required to wear masks when interacting with students and also when interacting with others. And this includes procedures in the bus lots. This includes procedures in other areas, so they will be wearing those masks at all times. Now, there is a little bit of a concern, and we're looking at safety alternatives for some of this. As bus drivers drive, and you all know with wearing masks, sometimes your glasses fog, especially for those glass wearers. And this can create sometimes unsafe conditions. So we're looking at alternatives to implement for some of that as we're making sure that our drivers can see as they're driving down the road. We are also looking at implementing procedural pieces that have been recommended. We're looking at loading the bus from back to front and unloading from front to back. So as students come in, the first students that we pick up will sit at the back, so that way they're not crossing each other's path. And when we unload, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to unload kids at the front, and then the kids at the back will be unloading later. Students from the same household are going to be sitting together. We're also going to be implementing seating assignments. This is already implemented in our district, kindergarten through 8th grade. We already require seating assignments because of discipline. And so because of that, we'll be able to implement assigned seatings, and this will help not only to be able to distance kids for those buses that have less kids, but also it'll help with contact tracing. So if in the event that we have a case, we will know which kids were around a particular other kid, so that we're able to do some of that. So that will assist with that. We're also looking at doing or implementing windows being down while the bus is driving whenever weather permits. As far as disinfecting procedures go, we are looking at disinfecting high-touch areas daily. That is like your handrails that kids are touching as they go in. We are also looking at frequent disinfecting using solutions proving to effectively fight COVID. Again, the frequency of this is going to vary based on the solution that we pick. First Student has a couple of options that they're making available, and so we are in discussions with them to settle on which product we will be using. But we will be doing frequent disinfecting of buses. Hand sanitizer will be made available to students upon entry. So we will be making hand sanitizer available to kids. So as they come in, they'll get hand sanitizer. before they go to their seats. And finally, we will be doing deep sanitizing a bus, and we're going to be downing a bus for 48 hours while we deep clean it in the event that we have a COVID positive case. Again, these are some of the pieces that we're looking at implementing in transportation to try to minimize the risk of contracting the virus.
And so much like we have established guidelines for transportation and food, we also have established guidelines for instruction. We know that some of our students often return to school with what we, as educators, refer to as a summer slide. Well, now we know not only may we have a summer slide, we're going to have a COVID-19 slide. And so it's important that we are prepared and ready to assess those academic needs of our students. And so we will have our protocols in place that will assess and identify what strategies and resources we have available to be able to support individual instructional needs of our students. We also will spend time focusing on mastering those prioritized standards as well as competencies. This is how we're going to close that gap with COVID slide as well as summer slide. And this is through, much like the work that we have already started within our district with SRG, not looking at widely what standards we have, but looking at prioritize or anchor standards to identify how do we go deeply, and then how do we provide students multiple opportunities to demonstrate their mastery. And this is going beyond always depending on one assessment, paper pencil assessment. It is those activities, those projects that have, that students are able to show us in some way they can demonstrate the mastery. Now, what's so neat about this is that we have learned that mastering competencies is one of the focal areas within the KSDE plan. And so because we have already started that journey with SRG, we are actually ahead of some other districts across the state that will just begin this work this fall. So that's something positive that we are pleased about. We also know that instruction, we must spend time revisiting what the digital curriculum is that we have available at all levels, and providing professional development and information for our students and staff on how to use our new technology devices that our students will have in their hands this fall. It's important that those tools, talking about curriculum as a tool, but also our technology devices are tools on how we must begin to use them for our daily instruction. Using the curriculum online and using those devices, along with providing those instructional strategies on how to teach remotely, are going to set us up to be better prepared in the event we need to make a pivot at any time to either that blended approach or to a full remote. So you'll hear on Friday about some of the specific professional development topics that we're planning, but it is around helping our staff being better prepared and equipped to transition to remote or blended, even if we are teaching on site. We also know that our emphasis on academic can't be the only way we're supporting our students' growth. We also have to be very intentional and purposeful, including those supports that we must have in place to support the whole child. And so therefore, there will be expectations that are outlined in our protocol around SECD, which means social, emotional, character development. And we know that we must utilize our resources like Second Step, restorative practices, safe and civil, so that we are supporting the social well-being of our students. There are very detailed protocols that have been established for those special areas like art, PE, music, and library. And so we will provide guidelines what social distancing looks like in those settings and what usage of supplies look like in those settings, and the cleaning protocol that will occur with library books, so that we still are able to get library books in the hands of our students, but there's a cleaning protocol before those books can be rechecked out to others. So these are things that we are planning in order to be prepared to support the instructional aspect of our return to school.
Gil Alvarez, Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Schools. I do want to continue with our on-site, some of the areas with specifically extracurricular activities. I know there's been a lot of questions around that, but any extracurricular activities that we do across our district, we definitely want to follow our safety guidelines and procedures, social distancing, wearing masks as appropriate, following any guidelines from the Kansas State High School Activities Associations. Specifically around athletics, we have not heard, and there's been no update or information around fall sports competitions as of yet, but we do hear that there is some more guidance, and possibly even later on or closer to the start of school, there may be even more guidance at that particular point. But as of now, we are following our guidelines for summer conditioning. So we do have that particularly going on at this point, making sure that we have disinfecting equipment, keeping kids in the same groups so they're not passing anything, wearing masks when appropriate. Obviously, we don't want them wearing it when they're running and something bad happened because they're wearing a mask. So that we are following all the guidelines necessary for athletics. As far as other after-school activities, I know Michelle's going to talk a little bit about Latchkey, but our after-school program for middle schools, we are planning to continue after-school program as well, but it probably will not start till around September. At this point, and we were not going to have any of our after-school activities start. I'm going to talk about a soft launch or the orientation week, which will be half days. I'll talk about that here in just a second. But none of our after-school activities, including the after-school program, will start or continue during that particular orientation day. Field trips. Our field trips in particular are going to be canceled. We're not going to have any field trips during the first quarter. We do plan to reevaluate to see where we are at the end of first quarter to see if something we can do for second. But if things don't get better, then we're going to plan on not having field trips as well throughout the first semester. So each quarter we'll just reevaluate how that is, but there will be no field trips in our schools as well. So Michelle, want to talk a little bit about Latchkey?
Yes, Michelle Ingenthron. Our Latchkey programs are licensed by the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, and our programs follow all KDHE regulations, which also includes limiting our numbers based upon our site license. So we have 48 sites. Each one of those sites has their own license, and so the number of students that we serve at each site may fluctuate based on the license that we have received from the state. Our Latchkey team regularly works also with the Sedgwick County Health Department, and part of this collaboration is what has helped us to provide a successful summer program on a limited basis this summer. So we recognize the need to continue to provide this service to our community, and we are happy to do so. Those parents who are interested can look for enrollment information very soon. It will be listed on our USD 259 website, our Latchkey site, so that will be made available in the next couple of weeks.
Gil Alvarez, Assistant Superintendent. I just wanted to end and remind everyone that we do have and are continuing our online enrollment at this particular point because we are concluding the on-site and moving into what we call the My School remote learning opportunity. But at this point, we definitely want all to enroll online so we'd have less amount of mass gatherings or people that are actually coming to the buildings when official enrollment actually does start. So please do enroll at this time. Our next option is the My School Remote, which is K-12. This is where you can enroll at your neighborhood or base school or magnet school, but you will be remotely doing or the learning from your home, off-site, not physically at the buildings. The technology devices will be provided to students if this particular learning opportunity is chosen. Participate in a full traditional school day online is what we're looking at. So they are going to be going through the normal schedule, just like the students that are physically at the buildings. They will still have to, as far as face-to-face learning with teachers. In the secondary, they will also be face-to-face with teachers, walking through those particular class periods that they normally would do in a normal setting. Attendance will be taken daily We want to make sure that everybody is taking attendance and seeing if they are participating in this particular option. Elementary, once again, will have daily lessons with face-to-face, and secondary will do the same for every single class period. I did talk about athletics at the previous slide, so I did want to remind too, for those that are interested in the remote option, in order to be eligible at this particular time, according to the Kansas State High School Activities Association, you do have to be enrolled in one course in the physical building. That's going to be for this remote learning opportunity as well as virtual. So I wanted to make that clear. So if anybody is participating in any type, not just athletics, but any Kansas State High School Activities Association activity as well, debate, those kind of things, will have to be enrolled in at least one course physically on site to be eligible to participate in those events. We also, just a reminder, when we talk about enrollment, we definitely want to know that even though you're choosing My School Remote, we do want you to enroll now as soon as possible to reduce the number of people going to the building. So you still have to enroll as normal, like you would normally do, even if you're choosing My School Remote option. We also know that there is a questionnaire within the particular guideline that's going to allow students and families to determine what learning opportunity they would like to choose. So that is part of the enrollment process. So we still would like everybody to enroll, even though you're interested in the My School Remote. So parents, students, and teachers are required to submit a signed daily log of activities. We want to keep track of what is actually occurring and the learning that is happening by using the remote option. A student assessed on the same standards and competencies as traditional classrooms, so they're not losing out on any of the learning. The same standards will be utilized. Learning will be paced with all students just like it would be in a normal classroom, so we want them to stay in line with what is happening physically in the building. We do ask, and this is important, we will ask for a semester commitment is required because we will be choosing it, and once we get the numbers in regards to who's going to remote, who's going to be physically there, we will be determining our staffing to determine what teachers will be teaching remotely, what teachers will be teaching physically. So we ask, if remote is chosen, that you stay in the semester so we can get that on what official transcripts or unofficial transcripts, and then make according changes as necessary for second semester. So that is a requirement to commit till semester. Many courses are also available through My School Remote. Some courses will only be offered through the on-site option, so we make sure that our core subjects are being offered in the remote, but there are some elective courses or exploratory courses that may not be offered due to the singleton classes. So we will allow, and there's going to be options even in the high school too, to allow for, if you want to, especially for athletics or activities as well, to go back on site for that one class. If there's a singleton like band or orchestra that you're very interested in, those remote learners can still go on site for that one exploratory class and then go back to the remote setting. So we have some flexibility there, but we know that not all courses will be offered through this remote learning opportunity. So, but we will have course offerings as well.
All right, so next we will discuss EI Academy, which is our full virtual school, and it does have enrollment for students K through 12. And so when thinking about what might be some of the differences between My School Remote and EI Academy, a virtual school, this is Tiffany. As Gil described just a moment ago, students from that elect to be a part of My School Remote are still associated with their school. They still attend classes during the regular school day. For students that may want something that is non-traditional, or they want something that provides flexibility, that classes can be completed after regular school hours. For a student who wants their instructional pacing to be different, that they are able to progress as they demonstrate mastery of those particular skills and standards, and they're able to move on at a self-pace, then EI Academy would be the better fit for that particular student and family. EI Academy will provide technology devices for all students, and there is a very large course selection available for those students. In addition to the core content that all of our students participate in at each grade level and for each content, there's this robust selection of elective courses also through our EI Academy. Very much interest-based. Some of those include coding and cybersecurity and esports. And so for a student who, again, wants that flexibility in scheduling, that flexibility in pacing, this would be a better fit for them. I mentioned earlier that EI Academy is its own school, so a student who enrolls in EI Academy is no longer enrolled in their base school. However, as Gil did describe, any student wanting to continue to participate in any of those CASHA activities like athletics would be required to enroll in one course at their neighborhood school. And that is a requirement for participation from CASHA. Also at EI Academy, it's important to note that there are staff there that are going to be there to support not only the academic needs and be able to monitor the learning and the pacing of students and be able to meet with students virtually. There's also staff that are designated to support the emotional, social needs of our students. We want to make sure that there are still opportunities to check on the social well-being of our students that are not in our buildings face-to-face, and so there are designated staff that will be responsible for that. As far as commitments, because EI is a school, we are asking our families that are interested in it to commit at minimum to one semester as well, because much like what Gil described, staffing needs to be able to support that. But because it is its own school, it does operate much like other schools. If you're wanting to transfer to another school, meaning your neighborhood-based school, at the end of this semester, fall semester, you would need to speak a special transfer at that moment to transfer back. Or you could remain at EI Academy for the entire school year and then next fall enroll, meaning fall 21, enroll back into your neighborhood school or apply for a magnet school if that is the interest that a student family may have. And I'll just reiterate what has already been shared. We highly encourage families to go ahead, go online and enroll. Online enrollment is open, and by completing that enrollment online does decrease the number of individuals that will need to come to the building physically during our building enrollment time, and that's what we are wanting to do. By enrolling now, families still will have the option next week after our final plan has been approved by the board to go in and opt in which of these particular learning model options fit best for them and their child. And so I want to, again, just highlight the learning model options that we are prepared to include in our recommended plan next Monday that the board will approve. On-site, which is in-person learning, traditional building, people coming back to the building for face-to-face instruction with enhanced health and safety guidelines in place. My School Remote, which is online learning, but students will still be enrolled in their base school, their neighborhood school or their magnet school, while participating fully online. And then EI Academy, which is a virtual school, and it is K-12. It provides flexibility in scheduling and individualized pacing for learning. Again, We encourage families, please go online and complete online enrollment.
Gil Alvarez, Assistant Superintendent. Wanted to talk a little bit about some adjustments we have made to the reentry or start of school we call soft launch, and then we have a week there of orientation, so I wanted to share that with you. You can see we're going to start with our staff in services. All staff will return on the 5th. The previous calendar would have said August 5th through the 12th, but we have extended our staff in services till the 14th. So it's now the 5th through the 14th, knowing that we need additional time too to provide the extra time for the new procedures that we will be implementing, as well as some of the other learning that is necessary. On the 14th then is when we're going to have our 6th and 9th grade orientation. So that is a change too. It was previous on the 12th. It is now moved to the 14th for all 6th and 9th grade orientation, which will definitely give us an opportunity to see how these new processes and procedures will play out in a school setting with a smaller group of students. Plus, those 6th and 9th graders need a good transition still going into new buildings. So August 17th is actually going to be the new start, but the week of August 17th is what we call orientation week. That is going to be half days. So you can see the start and end time. So K-12 students will attend morning sessions only. So if your start time of your school is 7 a.m., you'll go from 7 to 11:15. If you're an 8 o'clock start, you'll go from 8 to 12:15. And if you're a 9 o'clock start school, you're going 9 to 1:15. So this is the entire week of August 7th through 17th, August 17th through the 21st is that orientation week where the students will come in the morning, professional learning in the afternoon, continuing to provide more professional learning and guidelines that are necessary to really start the school for the on-site learning. And this will occur also for my remote and virtual, all three of them will start with this orientation week. Latchkey is not available during the soft launch, neither will after-school program for middle schools. That will not be during that soft launch part. So on August 24th, Monday, August 24th, is when all students that have chosen to be on site will attend the full day. If you chose My School Remote, that'll be your first time also to be going all day. So August 24th will be regular school hours for all schools to attend. Reason for this orientation and soft launch to get us started, transition smoothly to the return of school regardless of setting. So that would include on-site, the My School Remote, or EI Academy. We want to make sure that we reconnect with our students and provide community building, which ties into the idea of social emotional learning, trauma-informed practices. It's been a while since schools have actually been physically in the building, so this is the time to really connect, build relationships, and really connect with the students. So we're going to promote that our buildings kind of don't start with just, we're going to delay the academic instructional activities that normally happen or the rules and regulations to really start with how can we connect and provide social emotional learning to begin during that time of orientation week. We're going to learn and practice new guidelines as well as provide staff with the needed professional learning, professional development to begin the school appropriately.
Michelle Ingenthron. Today we have outlined our commitment to support each student to be future ready as we prepare to reopen our schools. You saw our work on supporting the whole child with SECD content and, as Gil just stated, relationship building, and our plans for the soft start. Communication at the district level as well as the school level is vital for success for all learners, and our leaders are committed to ensuring that this communication happens. I would like to note, and if you can see the slides at the bottom, there's our website, usd259.org, WPS Return. It's a great site for parents to go to. There's enrollment information, but also information updated according to our plan.
Right. And so, again, online enrollment is open now, and so we encourage families to take advantage of being able to complete that process online. Other things coming up, Governor Kelly will be sharing her education plan this afternoon. Again, I mentioned earlier, the KSDE guidelines have been approved. Actually, we heard earlier today by the Kansas Board of Education, so that date is no longer the 16th. It was this morning. On Thursday, tomorrow's Thursday, on Friday, we will be back here with you with another workshop presentation related to our employee supports and the protocols that have been established in collaboration across our system, as well as professional development supports that are being planned. And I just want to echo something that Fabian mentioned earlier. Even though there are educational folks sitting up here, there is not a single plan, guideline, protocol, or decision that has been made in isolation. This has been a true across departments, system up, system down collaboration and doing so. And so 3 of us from the academic field are up here, but this has been truly a united effort by our operation staff as well.
And I'm just gonna tag in, this is Alicia Thompson, Superintendent. And also, let's not forget the most important folks, and that has been our teachers and our parents who have sent thousands and thousands and thousands of feedback that was also used to be able to craft what we have.
Most definitely. So I'm sorry, got us off there, which all leads to the final recommended plan that will be shared and approved, hopefully by the board on Monday. And so we have been sharing things today and sharing things Monday, and we'll share things again Friday. But this is all contingent on what we continue to learn each day and being available and ready to make any adjustments as needed. And so with that, I just want to remind folks that, you know, it's important to know this virus is unpredictable and its impact on us has been uncontrollable. And although we are planning and preparing to provide these options that we just shared with you, it's important to keep in mind that our plans could change. They could change due to circumstances beyond our control. They could change because of additional information that we learn from health professionals. It could change based upon the continuous feedback that we continue to receive from our key stakeholders. And so we are prepared to, at this moment, for the 3 scenarios that have been shared today, but we also have plans in our back pocket if we need to pivot and make changes as well. And so with that, it's important that everyone has the opportunity to stay engaged and updated. And so our WPS TV is our live stream. Of course, you can continue to send comments and questions to info@usd259.net. And the most current updates is always available on our district website, usd259.org/WPS return. And know that our final plan will be finalized on July 20th. So we'll be back here to talk about that on that date. And as I wrap up, I'm going to end with how Dr. Thompson started us off with mask up. You know, this is the minimum that each of us can do, our part in helping to mitigate the spread of this virus. So, mask up. And with that, we welcome your questions and comments.
It's not working now? Dr. Mike, we had a glitch and I had to purge the queue. Do I need to do something now to get it started again?
All they have to do is press add and they should add back in.
It's not working.
Well, you may have to raise your hands for
Okay,
the
okay.
sorry.
Well, we had a glitch, you know, it happens. So I'm gonna call on Ernestine. Am I understanding that we're at this point planning on having, I don't know how to put it, a full classroom of students at the same time? We are not intending to do the Monday, Tuesday. You're not proposing to do the Monday, Tuesday, and then another half on Thursday, Friday?
At this time, we are planning for the on-site, not the hybrid of the blended, but the on-site where students are in session Monday through Friday.
But, so the assumption is that, say, 12 students would be on-site, and 12 students would maybe enroll and be doing it remote?
Only if a family and child chose to enroll in either My School Remote or EI Academy.
No, I understand
So
about
all
the
other
EI Academy is separate, but
Yeah.
I'm talking about the in-classroom where the students have, Mrs. Aardvark for teacher, that teacher then would have some students remote and some students in class, but depending on the mix of number would depend on how many parents decide to enroll in which half.
Correct. So the difference between what we are proposing at this moment and hybrid would have a cohort of students that might attend physically just on Monday, Tuesday in the building.
Right.
And then the rest of the week, they would be remotely, and then we would alternate those cohorts. That's not what we're proposing. What we are proposing are three options, and a family who feels as if returning physically to the building is the best option for them. We will have the doors open Monday through Friday in a traditional setting, much like school has operated in the past, only though with the enhanced guidelines. So Monday through Friday, they are physically in the building. Whereas you may have another family who has made the option
Yeah.
of one of those others.
What I was looking for is how would the particular classroom look? So it might have 20 students there and 5 students on remote, or it might have 15 students on remote and 10 students. So it'll depend on how that enrollment turns out.
Yes.
Okay. What procedure are we doing so that the students can see remotely from where the teacher is? Do they have we don't have a camera like here. What would we do?
That's a great question, because what we would be doing is actually having teachers who were designated only as remote teachers. And so they would have a classroom remotely. So they would not have students at that moment that are physically in the classroom that they're trying to teach instruction to and teach instruction remotely. So they would have only a remote classroom, or they would only have the physical students present. Now, where that could look different at a different level, perhaps at a high school, is you perhaps could have 1 hour that your class is 100% remote, and you could have second hour where 100% of your kids are physically in class, but you would not try to manage doing both at the same time.
So even an elementary teacher would not try to have remote and in-class students in the same class?
That is correct.
Okay. One last question, well, at least for now, I'll come back after the others have had a chance, and that's, most of the stuff I've seen has been for secondary, has talked about block teaching, block classes, so that you don't have to change every hour, but you have a large block. A lot of the research has shown that that's even a better way to teach, because you don't have to have, well, I don't need to explain it.
Yep.
Anyway, are we thinking about using block scheduling for the secondary, especially for the high school, not necessarily for middle school, but secondary?
We are in the process of problem solving and looking at doing some things differently with our high school schedule. We were just meeting prior to this meeting, talking about that, and there's a team that's working on that. So we do believe it's going to look different. We're just not prepared today to talk about what those differences
Okay.
are, but it would look different.
Okay, I'll let someone else ask, and then I'll come back and ask some
Okay.
more.
Ben?
Hi, I got a big pile. So I'll start chronologically. For the social distancing slide, which is like slide, I don't know, 6 or something. Expectations on face coverings. You mentioned that we would be looking at guidance from the county and city for students. So currently, the mask order is written, goes down to age 5, but currently expires on August 11th or 12th or something. Now, they could extend it at any time. Do we, as the Board of Education, have the option of going beyond and requiring them anyway?
Of course, you have the say, you cannot go below, you can't, in the rules, you can create your own as long as it's not less than what the city or the county rules are.
Okay. Okay, I guess another mask question. For transportation, the slide said masks required of all bus riders and monitors, but Fabian said that masks would be required for students. Is that correct?
That is correct, and bus riders mean students. So yes, all students, because of, again, not being able to fully social distance on a bus, masks are going to be required. And our goal is to have masks available for drivers. We're going to recommend students wear their own, but we're going to have disposable masks available for drivers. So as kids are coming into the bus and maybe they're not wearing one, they would be able to hand one out.
Okay. I guess since you're up here already, since First Student is a subcontractor of ours, how much power do we have to mandate these kind of items? If there's non-compliance or whatever, what kind of levers do we have to ensure compliance?
It depends on the item, but they have been really good to work with, and no question, I think whatever procedures we want to implement with students, we would be able to talk to them about it, and I'm fairly certain that we'd be able to implement.
Okay. Let's see. I think that's enough Fabian questions. Can we explain cohorting? What is that?
So this is Michelle Ingenthron. So at the elementary level, when you think of a kindergarten classroom, 20, 25 kids in that classroom, we're considering that a cohort. So our goal is to keep that cohort of students together throughout the day as much as possible, not having them mix with, let's say, Dr. Irving's kindergarten classroom of 25. So we want to keep our classrooms separated from each other throughout the day.
Okay. I guess a comment I've written is that a lot of these things on social distancing, nutrition services, we already do a lot of these things across the district in various pockets and such. And so it's kind of nice that we're able to take what we know works and expand it, like eating of meals within the classroom that we do at certain elementaries already. Okay, for instruction, I've received several, I'm a music and theater nerd. It's no secret. So I've got a lot of friends that are involved heavily in the music and theater community in the city, at a professional and amateur level as well. So they've been asking me, when are we going to see detailed guidelines on how that works? Now I know there's a CASHA portion of it that's competitive and everything that's going to be governed by them, but in terms of our classrooms, like thinking, Buckner Elementary is in my district, what kind of things are we looking for there that are going to look different? Because we know music and theater involve a lot of talking and a lot of loud talking, so.
And
right,
singing.
and blowing and singing and on all of those things, band, orchestra, that kind of thing.
So what we have currently is our fine arts department and our art department working with teachers at the building level to create those guidelines. And there is a draft of them already. that they have started compiling. And so our coaches, curriculum coaches, have been working side by side virtually with folks who work in the building and can provide us guidance on realistically what could this look like. I will say that there's everything from how they do social distancing with their performances and practices, the equipment and things that they use. They are detailing it. They are providing guidance on when, for performances for families, what that could look like. And so when the final plan is completed and submitted to you, we will have that available, and we'll be able to say where folks can access that information. But there are, because I've seen the draft, very detailed plans related to all of those exploratory areas.
And I will also note there are national orchestra, you would know the names of them, and drama types of national organizations that are guiding this work. And so they are disseminating that information to the state level, and of course the state level then does that. So while those teachers then will take all of that data, kind of like what we've done with everything else, all of the research out there, all the articles and things of that nature, those also have been used because I've seen articles and things have been forwarded to me from those national organizations that are also providing some guidance as well.
Okay. Okay, My School Remote, I think we covered that this will be an option that's available for all of our families. But I had a note about IEP families and families with categorical students.
Dr. Evans.
Specific questions, Mr. Blankley, or just if it is eligible to all?
Okay.
Is that the question?
Yeah, the question is, does all mean all families?
Anyone is welcome to enroll and express their interest in remote, in the EI Academy, or of course, in our on-site learning. What we are still seeking clarification on and have a meeting with KSD on Friday to discuss is what discretion do IEP teams have and what involvement do they need to have for certain things like remote learning? And I'll give you an example. If a student is enrolling in a remote learning program, there might be certain components of their IEP that raise questions, things that are difficult to implement remotely. Physical therapy would be one example of something that comes to mind. So clarity is still being sought, but parents at this time can express their interest in enrolling in any option. If there are any concerns or if things develop with the state, we will make sure to reach out and guide them through the process.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Another, I guess, the last thing I have is just two general comments. So they're not questions, but they're quick. During the state board meeting, I was watching the Twitter feed rather than because I was working at the same time. But I did note that one of our state board members did specifically call out when they were talking about the remote learning options. They specifically called out Sedgwick, Wyandotte, and Johnson County because of our pandemic numbers are rising rapidly. They wanted to make sure that the public knew that these particular options were geared towards our area. So the other statement I had was managers across our city, business owners, anyone in like a human resources role that happens to be watching this, please help us be flexible. You might notice the school restart is going to be tough on our working families. The summer was not easy. The spring was even worse. And so far, anecdotally, I have not seen as much work on the types of alternate working arrangements, flexibility, alternate work scheduling, reduced hours. I know we've had a lot of layoffs and a lot of furloughs, but those folks that haven't been laid off or furloughed are working even harder. And so especially if we have to go fully remote again, I just hope and pray that the folks out there that have these decision-making abilities, and not just 259, not just the people we employ, but the entire community needs to understand that going to a layoff or a voluntary separation should not be the first option. We should be looking at second shift, reduced hours, those kinds of things, because kids working remote are going to need an adult there. And the elephant in the room is that during the remote process, we had kids that did not have adequate adult supervision at home. And it was because people had to go to work. And there have been people that have had to go to work this whole time that didn't have the opportunity to work from home like me, that didn't have a stay-at-home spouse or a grandma or a grandpa that was able to step in. And so I have no power over other folks' decisions, but I just hope that we can get through this. And we will, just together.
Mr. Rhodey.
Stan, can you hear me? Okay. I got a couple of questions. First, we were talking about buses, and that's an interesting way to load and unload buses, and I think that's a great idea. One of the questions that came to my mind when you were talking about that was, why wouldn't we have the kids wear gloves while they're on the bus and take them off when they get off the bus? Because, as I remember buses, you touch every surface in the bus, get into the back, and then every other kid touches that same surface.
And that's something that we can certainly consider. I will tell you, in talking to our health professionals, that gloves are often not necessarily the safest, because you are spreading the virus as you're touching different areas. So sometimes it's a perceived aversion of safety. We can certainly look into it again and make them available. But again, I think as you're looking at touching, if you're touching the virus, you're still going to be spreading it everywhere, even with the gloves.
And I will also add from the health professionals that it's a special way you have to take those gloves off. And if you don't, then that's even more dangerous than having the gloves on. So that would be another added kind of piece that we would have to do a lot of training on, not even just for the kids, but for adults too, as well as how to take your masks on and off as well. So those are all things that we would have to take into consideration as well.
Okay. In this presentation and versus what Ms. Moses presented on Monday was the water bottle. It said in her presentations, we will fill the water bottles we'll get water bottle filling stations. And in this presentation, it says we may fill them at drinking fountains.
Yeah, that, we will have reusable water bottles at those filling stations, yes. So
Okay, so
I
we're
was
not
just
gonna
not
be filling
clear.
at the water bottle, we're not gonna be filling water bottles at the drinking fountains, but at the stations only.
What we will have, just so you know, that as Luke said before, we have ordered what is available for us right now, and we will be replacing the drinking fountains with the water bottle fillers, the water fillers, and they are where you take the bottle and you put the bottle, you sit it there, the water comes out, and you pull it out. So we will not be encouraging people, and we will be, the regular drinking fountains that you push and you put your mouth on, we will not be doing any of that.
Okay.
It will be the water bottle fillers. And again, we have a certain amount of them that we're able to get right now, and we will get those put in before school starts. And then we have another shipment of those things that we're getting. But again, everything is on, everybody's ordering them. So we
Right.
get them as we get, and then we will definitely be installing those as we go. And we will our ultimate plan is to replace all of our drinking fountains with
water
refillable
bottles.
water.
Okay. The other thing that was kind of, I don't want to say contradicting, but different, is, you guys are doing a great job, and I realize that there's so many different ways to look at this, and we get to look at it from a different angle without a lot of pressure, so I understand that. But Monday's presentation and today, we're talking about masks on buses for kids in kindergarten, but in the school, we're talking about, I can't remember what grade it was, below 3 or something, we weren't gonna require them. Are we gonna require them on the buses for K through 12? And then when we get to the school, the kids from K to 3 or 4, whatever it was, get to take them off?
And again, I will be clear about that. Regardless of any age on the bus, they're gonna wear those masks,
Okay.
okay?
And that
But-
includes pre-K.
And that includes pre-K. So we will all be wearing masks on the bus, adults and students. But when we get into the classroom, what we do know is that secondary will, and the staff and the students will have coverings on their mouth, or, whatever coverings that they select. But in elementary, there's where the debate continues to lie. Okay, so there has not been a final decision yet. We know that our city and our county officials say 5 years old or more have to wear them. So if that is over with before school, that ordinance is over with before school starts. So then we don't know if they're gonna say it again, or they're gonna continue that, or are they gonna make amendments to that? We are just not sure what we will do until that ordinance comes out. But we will be prepared for whatever ordinance come out. And then, as Mr. Blankley asked and made the comment, do we have authority to do above and beyond? So then that begins to be the decision. So that's why you keep getting the contradictory, because KSDE has one, city and county has one, and USD 259 can create their own. So you have 3 different things for the elementary students. Secondary is straight, but we don't know yet for elementary, but we know about the bus, so we're just waiting there for elementary.
Okay, and that's great, because that clears that up, and hopefully the people that are listening understand what we're talking about. My next questions are about open campus. The way the wording was is, it sounds like the campus is open and we're free to go from A to B, and I remember lunches with my son, even though he wasn't supposed to leave the school. Are we gonna allow the kids to leave school to go to lunch? And then, kind of a secondary to that, I remember at East High, we had a bunch of food trucks that would show up at lunchtime, which I'm not discouraging food trucks, or, I think those guys are great, but I see it as a congregation point outside, and, open campus to me at lunch was, like here at North, when I would come here to do different things, there would be students all over the lawn doing, just interacting with each other. Are we gonna allow that? Are we gonna keep them in the building? What are we thinking when we say open campus?
Well, we're looking at Gil Alvarez, Assistant Superintendent. We're looking at both options at this particular point. We know that if we do close lunch, we got to make sure that all the students are supervised. Are teachers available to be able to supervise every single student? Do we have enough lunches, meaning lunch periods, to allow 2,000 kids or 1,800 kids to go through a lunch line, since that's not what our normal process or procedure has been. Also for open lunch with opening more lunches would allow for less students in the building, but then the concern would be students being together for off campus. So there's a lot that we're looking at and thinking of. We are in the process. We had a meeting yesterday with a group that is determining what that particularly can look like. But I think it's a tough question, because I think there's pros and cons for both. And I mean, obviously, if you go open campus, you're reducing the amount that are in the school, so they can spread out more in the building to where you have less or better opportunities for social distancing. But then you hear that those students that are leaving will be together in a car going to a particular restaurant. But we also want to make sure that we can do closed lunch in the building with appropriate supervision and social distancing, with everybody being there. It's a little bit more than just saying, yeah, they can eat in the classroom, because you got to have classrooms available with teachers in there to supervise.
Right, and I understand that completely, because, and that was my thought, was you put 6 kids in a car and they're not gonna be able to social distance, and they go to Hardee's, or, I shouldn't be naming names, I guess, and advertising for people, unless they wanna send us dollars. We can be bringing the virus back into the school by allowing kids to go out of the school, because they're not gonna social distance, they're gonna do what they want. You know, I know high school kids, and I was one once a long time ago. The other thing, this is kind of I don't know how to ask this question, but our teachers are geared for passion and love of their students. And one of the problems that we had when we started giving out lunches in the educational packets is we had teachers hugging kids and kids hugging teachers. It's programmed into our teaching staff. I mean, you know, there's a lot of it's national. You see the kids coming back to school the first day, and the teachers have different things for them, and generally it's some kind of a hug or some kind of touching. And we're going to push that away. How are we going to communicate that the first day of school, we don't want you to hug your teacher and do the things that you would normally be doing on the first day of school? And that's going to be a tough one because, you know, I get it. You know, I'm with the kids. I know that there were some teachers I wouldn't hug at all, but there were some that probably would. But, you know, some of them it's just hand touching where they would give high fives and different types of things. Are we going to, how are we going to handle that?
This is Tiffany Irving, and that's why that additional time for professional development before students enter the building are going to be so critical, because it is going to be a complete shift in how we operate versus what our hearts tell us. Those of us who went into education are lovers and want to be able to show our students how much we care. And so that soft launch time and that additional professional development time is going to be needed to help our staff become aware of all of these new guidelines, but also begin to talk about what is allowable. Because, I mean, our kids are going to be excited and ready to see us again. Our kids are going to be excited to see one another. I mean, telling a elementary student, kindergarten student, that it's not okay to hug their friend any longer is going to be tough. So we're going to need to be prepared to teach our students other strategies and how you still show kindness and still how you are caring, but doing it differently in how we have operated in the past.
We also, Dr. Irvin explained that very eloquently. I'm going to add also that we've been talking a lot about, with the little people especially, is having videos so that we can model for them the appropriate ways to take off the mask, the appropriate ways to do, as Ms. Ernestine and I like to do, is elbow bumps, and all of those things will be modeled for students through the videos that we will be able to use throughout our soft launch week to be able to model and show children how they need to, you know, work themselves through and understand how we operate now in the new, I don't know, people say don't say new norm, but the way that we have to operate during this time.
Right. I appreciate that. That's, you know, that's going to be a tough one. I don't know how we're going to handle that one. My last question that I have for right now is for special ed, and I don't know how to ask it politically correct, so I'm just going to ask it and move on. You know, they're different kids, and they have different health needs and different health requirements, and you know, saliva and other bodily fluids are prevalent with those children. And how are we going to handle those kids? And I've gotten a lot of questions from staff that ask about that, and how do we handle these kids, and what do we do? I mean, we've got kids on respirators. You know, we've got it from A to Z, and need to make sure that these kids are not only protected, but they're protected differently, I think. And I have a feeling that's going to come from behind me.
It is. Dr. Evans.
You would be 100% correct, Mr. Rohde. The microphone? Fabian and I are slightly different heights. Mr. Rohde, you are 100% correct. And I think that when we think about the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, It's true now more than ever when the spirit of the law is about being individualized in these types of decisions. We're going to need to work with staff and work with families on what specifically does your child need. What kind of personal protective equipment, what kind of needs arise. It's going to be different at every school. It's going to be different for every student.
And I can understand that, and I'm sure that's a hard one to answer, because it is student to student, as I've seen. And, I just want to make sure that we're not leaving these kids out because they're a big part of our community also, and.
Yeah.
Kim-
Most
Kim,
definitely,
go ahead, go ahead.
I was going to say, most definitely not, henceforth why Dr. Evans is a part of the planning that has been occurring across the system. And he and his team are having conversations and creating guidelines related to what that's going to be, as he stated, from school to school, from classroom to classroom, and all the way down to individual students. And so what some of the guidelines at a special day school may look different for one of our comprehensive schools. And so he and his team have been working in collaboration with others and in regular contact with KSDE staff related to helping our schools with those plans.
And then I'm just going to add in just a little bit about the teacher side of that. So whatever material or PPE, because I know that's part of what they're talking about, the protective gear that is needed to work with the student that has some severe needs, we will have the appropriate PPE for those particular teachers that are working with those specific types of students. So I want to make that clear too, that we're not just looking out for the student, but we also are looking out for the teachers that are going to have to, that will be working with those students as well.
And that brings up a question, are we gonna have special PPE for our students? Because, as we well know that for some students that probably don't want to put a mask on because it would, just physically bother them. Are we gonna have to do something special with those kids?
That's 100% correct once again, Mr. Rohde. We are meeting this afternoon to discuss PPE further, and there are exceptions even within the city guidelines that Mr. Blankley referenced earlier, that some students and individuals, due to a disability, simply may not be able to wear a mask.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure that not only are we protecting our staff, but we're protecting our students from our staff, because it can go both ways with those kids very easily. Thank you very much, and I appreciate all your hard work, and sorry for all the questions, but just want to make sure that when it comes time to talk about this next Monday, I'm ready. So thank you again.
Thank you, because your questions also, if we have not already created plans to support, lets us know that we need to go back and problem solve and engage others so that we are prepared next Monday. So thank you.
Okay, do I have questions? We're back to Ben, okay.
It's
Back to Ben.
It's a short one. I glanced at my phone and got an email. I shouldn't have done that, but temperature checks. I know that that's kind of a fluid situation. Is that part of our guidance? Is it not? Why or why not?
We are definitely looking at what KSDE is going to recommend. We also have information about temperature checks from health professionals. And then we have our own personal opinions of what we think ought to happen with temperature checks. So before I make a statement about temperature checks, I want to make sure that I have all of the correct information from KSDE, make sure I have in writing all of the information from our health officials, and then making sure that, I take into consideration everybody else's opinions, and then we can make some recommendations about that, because there are a lot of opinions about temperature checks. And what they really do or what they really don't do. Mm-hmm. So we've got to before we make a determination of what we think we should do, we need to know the pros and the cons and what are we really going to get from the temperature checks.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Ron Rosales, 6th District. Going back to instruction, Dr. Irving, you were saying that SRG is pretty much compatible and kind of covers everything that we, I guess, are going to throw at it. Is that correct?
You know, we started our SRG journey last year, and it asked that work of us to look at the depth of standards that we have for every grade level content area, and really look at how could we prioritize and be able to focus our instruction on fewer standards, because there's no way we're going to be able to teach all of them.
Right.
And then not only be able to teach those fewer standards, but teach them because they are foundational skills. They are these anchor standards that if we could really get kids to master these, then they would be set up to be successful for the standards at the next level. And what SRG taught us is that we cannot depend on this one assessment at the end of a unit to say, this is what a student knows. That we need to plan so our assessments of students, those formative assessments of students, are really telling us, do they have it or do they don't? Do they don't? And so if they don't have it, then we can look at what else might be needed to close that learning gap. And so now what we have learned is the work we have been doing for the past year with SRG is really what the state now is asking and encouraging all districts across the state of Kansas to do. And so we are already on that journey. We've already implemented it elementary, and we are phasing in, this year with 6th grade, and we'll continue. But what we did this past spring during phase 1 remote is we didn't stop our professional development or front-loading our middle school, secondary staff. We continued that professional development, and so we believe that with us continuing that, we are on track to be able to continue to implement, that we are on track, that in the event we need to pivot to either a hybrid or remote, our teachers aren't going to be consumed with trying to teach every single standard and figuring out how they're going to do that remote. They're going to have fewer standards to focus on and be able to provide our students more in-depth learning to be able to be prepared. So we're pleased, actually, I think we're somewhat of trailblazers across the state because we had already started this journey prior to KSDE now asking other districts to do so. To the point that when we start getting wind that this might be something that's coming within KSDE's recommendations, we were contacted by other districts across the state asking for us to provide not only feedback, they want to know if we could do training during this time to help them get ready for it. Of course, we weren't able to provide training because we were consumed in our own plans, but we have been very open and collaborative in being able to share folks what we've learned from our first year implementation, those lessons learned, as well as resources that we've used to get to this point.
Great, and also.
That was a long answer, I apologize.
And Ron, I'm going to refer this to the teachers as well, anybody that's looking. In the first 1,000 pages in that document for the KSDE Return Back to School document that people can go online right now and see, the first 1,000 pages is exactly what Dr. Irving is talking about that we have already been doing.
Okay.
It's identical in those first 1,000 pages of the KSDE document, which was kind of cool to see their work in those documents.
Great, great. And then as far as Edgenuity, is this the online program that will be used all across the district for online learning?
Actually, Edgenuity would be the primary curriculum used for EI Academy for our virtual school. Whereas our My School Remote, because those teachers are teaching at the same pace as students who are on site, they're going to be using our curriculum that we would be using within our classrooms. So the core and the supplemental curriculum that is being used in our classrooms, those remote teachers will be using also daily with their My School Remote students.
Okay, because, so that means that the students at home, going back to SPED, so their teachers know, they know their IEP, they know their student and so on, and they're better adapted to, cater to their needs and such.
Yes.
So if they're in Edgenuity, and they're in SPED, is that possible, or how's that gonna work out?
Doctor.
Yeah, I'd be happy to help with that one. Again, and I know I sound like a broken record on this, but it depends upon the student. And that would be a decision for the IEP team, the parent very much a part of it, to discuss and decide if that's an appropriate platform for the student or not, and work together on that decision.
Okay. But Edgenuity is compatible, I guess.
It is, and we have had numerous students with special education needs in the past that have utilized Edgenuity.
Okay, thank you. And then just one last thing about Edgenuity, I guess oversight. I think Ben kind of alluded to this, and I think Mike did as well. But if you have a student who's at home, does the teacher in Edgenuity or however they're learning have some oversight? In other words, I guess integrity. I mean, how do we know that the student is going to be Googling a bunch of answers or whatever?
Well, even with virtual school, there are point checks or check-ins and types of assessments that our students must complete to demonstrate their mastery. Some of that is done virtually, but there are also points throughout the year that a student may have to come on site.
Okay.
It's not like your regular classroom, but there are those check-ins that are required throughout the year, even with our virtual school, to provide not only that check-in, but verification
Right.
of face-to-face of what a student has been demonstrating online.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, I'm going to move to our teleconference. Board members, do either Stan or, well, actually, we'll just start with Stan. Stan, do you have questions that you'd like to ask administration?
Thank you, Julie. Yes, thank you, Julie. I have two quick questions. Dr. Thompson made a comment at the very start of the meeting referring to Mike's question. Maybe she was also referring to my questions on Monday. What was the announcement about Dr. Min's? Is he speaking to us, or is she going to relay the information to us? I'm sorry, I missed that.
The last meeting, you all made the decision that you did not want to have a special guest, but that you gave me questions to submit to Dr. Min's, and he was going to write me back the answers to those questions, and I would read those questions and his answers publicly out loud in front of everyone.
So if I have questions, Stan Research District 4, so if I have questions for Dr. Min, I need to get those questions into you, Dr. Thompson?
That would be correct.
Okay. My last question, Julie, is on the question of my school semester commitment, is it possible to shorten that in any way to a quarter? It appears that we could have a lot of students or families who make a commitment to My Education remote at the start, and then things get much better on the local scene, and to wait a whole semester to stay in My Education or remote seems to be, like a really long time. I'm just asking, is there any possible way to maybe move that up to where you commit for a quarter, or is that even logistically possible?
This is Tiffany Irving. I will tell you that that is definitely something that we have put forth to problem solve around. We want to provide families an option. At the same time, we have to be prepared logistically to be able to have staff to support each of these options. And so we are problem solving and putting forth lots of plans to see what type of flexibility or what type of timeline might be needed. And so, after going through that, a semester is really where we landed in order to be able to sufficiently staff each of these various learning options. What we want to be able to do is during that orientation week is give families the opportunity to make a final decision if they thought they wanted to do one particular model, but now are feeling more comfortable moving to another, to have some flexibility during that orientation week to make that change. And we will make adjustments as needed to be able to support that. But much further than that, we really need families to make a commitment so that we have the staff who are qualified to teach remote up and ready to be able to do that, and staff who are in the classroom working physically with students are ready to be able to do that as well.
Stan Reeser, District 4. I would just like to encourage Dr. Thompson that your team maybe take another look at that issue of whether it would require a full semester commitment. And I will totally understand if it does have to be a semester commitment, but you might take a look at that one more time and just see if it's possible to shorten that down to a quarter, just on if that's possible.
We can definitely look at.
Julie, that's my.
Yeah,
Julie,
Stan.
that's my last question.
Stan, we definitely can take a look at that. And what we did was we were very responsive to the teachers that were on this, the group that Dr. Irvin gave a big long list of teachers. They were very, overwhelmingly felt like the semester is what was needed. So we would definitely need to go back to that group for considerations because, again, as a teacher, it's very difficult to be jerked from one learning model to another. Now you have to go back to your classroom in 2 more weeks. Now this week you got to go. It's a lot of logistics and a lot of efforts to be just shifting in and out of models. And they definitely was very strong that that was something that they did not want. So again, we will go back to the table and have further conversations to see if it's not the full semester, what logistically can we manage and continue to make sure that we don't have teachers in a role feeling kind of jerked around a little bit as it relates to going in and out so frequently. But we definitely will go back and take a look at that.
Stan Reeser, District 4. I appreciate that, Dr. Thompson. Thank you. And Julie, that's my last question.
Okay, now I know we've got some additional questions at the table, but I'm going to go first to Cheryl and let her have an opportunity since she hasn't asked anything yet. So, Cheryl, do you have questions for the team?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. This is Cheryl Logan at large. Several of my questions have been answered by the questions that the other board members have brought forth. But a couple of things I just want to make sure that we're clear on. With the standards, we have standards reference grading in the elementaries and we're moving into 6th grade. So we know what the key elements are, the anchor standards. We will be basing our other secondary students on the anchor standards that the Kansas State Department of Education put out. Is that correct?
What we will continue to do, this is Tiffany, is continue to provide professional development at all levels related to our SRG. And so although we have not transitioned yet with some of those secondary grade levels to SRG, we'll continue to front load that information and encourage them to begin to do that. But as we learned with our elementary implementation, this is not something you can just jump into and shift automatically. So we will provide professional development at the secondary level to continue to support them during this transition and encourage those who are ready to jump forward much quicker than our phase-in approach to be able to do that. But so I guess in short, the answer is we are going to continue with the phased-in plan that we have and begin to continue to front load and encourage those that are ready to move quicker to do so.
Okay, thank you. A couple more questions. I know we are doing enrollment now, and I know we've had a lot of families sign up for our EI Academy, but they did not know that we were going to have a My School Remote option to be available to them. And is it during enrollment, or would they now make that decision? How would we notify those parents of another option for remote learning, I guess is my question.
This is Tiffany again, and what we want is folks to go ahead and complete the enrollment process online. And so it's just our regular enrollment. Next week, after the board has approved our return to school plan, we will then provide options for parents to go back in and change if they would like to change from being a traditional on-school to EI or to My School. So anyone who has already completed enrollment or will complete enrollment over the next couple of days will have the opportunity to go in next week to opt in to the learning model that they would like their child to participate in the fall.
Thank you. Yeah, because that gives our parents the full range of options to choose from that way.
And Cheryl, I just want to stop right here just to, again, to reiterate to the board as well as our people that are listening, if you still don't know what you want to do, that's cool, but still enroll. Because what we don't want is to, at the end, when it's time to go, that we have all these people trying to come to a location to enroll. So the quicker that you can get on to just enroll, the better off that you're going to be. And then you can go in anytime to make your selection, but just get on and enroll.
And that's a great point. This is Cheryl Logan again. Yeah, I think this year more than any other, we need all of our parents to enroll their kids quickly, because we're having to move staff and make decisions based on enrollment. And if we don't know they're coming, that's going to be 3 times as difficult for us. So enrollment early is really critical this year. Last question, and I know we now have purchased enough technology for all of our students to be able to have technology to use remotely if, heaven forbid, we have to go that direction. But I am assuming that, and this is what I want you to confirm, that we will be training our staff with that technology from August the 5th to the 14th, and then during that orientation week, training our students and giving them the availability of that technology. Is that a correct statement?
That is 100% correct. And so on Friday, during our workshop, we'll be able to talk a little bit more about the professional development topics that we will be providing to our staff in August when they return, as well as supports and type of trainings we will have available for students and families as they become familiar with their new devices that they will receive this fall as well.
Great. That's good, because we want to be able to make sure that everybody's had training before we just hand them a computer and say, go remote.
Cheryl, I want to also Cheryl, can I chime in just on this topic so that the rest of the board and families understand as well that we are also going to continue to offer parent courses as it relates to the technology as well, so that we don't just stop at the student and the teacher, but there also are opportunities for families to have professional development. And if you remember the last survey, we asked the parents what would be the best way for us to be able to support you as well. And we've got a lot of good feedback there that we could use as well as we're building professional development for all as it relates to technology.
And my last question is, I know on Friday when we have our meeting, and we're going to be dealing with staff issues, a variety kind of staff kinds of concerns. But we also are kind of a little bit in limbo today because we've got KSDE's guidelines and also the governor having a conference this afternoon. Will we be discussing some of those things possibly on Friday, depending on what's said?
Yes, ma'am. We will, again, we have lots of pages to comb through for that, and then again, anticipating, you know, what we would be able to learn again from our governor. So whatever that is, we will definitely be communicating with you on Friday what those recommendations are, or what adjustments did they make, because I do understand there was several adjustments that were made in the plan that we originally have seen. And so I don't know what those are, but I know that there were some adjustments in that final document. And so we need to go back and peruse through those and make sure that we're not saying anything that was inaccurate, or if there's things we need to come back and say, this is different now. We'll do all of those things on Friday.
Okay.
And
Thank you very much.
Monday if need be, because again, we have 2 more sessions before the final, so we'll be able to have those conversations on Monday as well.
Right. Yeah, because we have a meeting Friday at noon and again Monday at noon, and we'll be discussing this plan as a whole. So, thank you.
This is Ernestine Crable of District 3. And as I understand it, the class size will be about the same as we've always had. Is our medical assumption about this COVID that if we all wear masks and the students all wear masks, that will mean that we don't have to have social distance within the classroom? Or are we going to try to make the class sizes small enough that we can have the students all 6 feet apart?
Well, we still will be providing guidelines regarding social distancing even in our classrooms, and there are some things that folks operationally and academically are trying to work out on what that could look like. But at the same time, we don't know how many students we're going to have physically in classrooms until we also learn how many families may be interested in one of the other options. And so is it likely that some of our classrooms could be smaller in number because of that? Most definitely. Once we have an idea of what families will be opting into, then we will be able logistically, I started off talking about puzzle. It's a huge puzzle, and then figuring out what those classroom sizes are going to be. But definitely, even with masks, there are still guidelines and recommendations from those we have been in collaboration with regarding social distancing, and so we'll be wanting that to occur in our classrooms.
Well, I do know that at the national level, Dr. Fauci and some others within that have talked about either social distancing or masks, and not as if you should take the mask off if you can be 6 feet away, but that it isn't as urgent to social distance. But I had another question, and it's kind of the backwards one of what Stan asked. I want to find out if a student is in the on-campus classroom and say they come close to somebody in their family they become contact with somebody with COVID, or they may have become. Can that student, I was hoping that there'd be a way that student could then do the 2 weeks social distancing by staying home and still be following the class remotely. Is that a possibility?
Most definitely. And so we are actually establishing, I'm getting my days mixed up. I don't know if that was something we talked about Friday. Friday, okay. It's all blending together to some point. I'm sorry, this is Tiffany. And there will be a protocol on what that looks like, because if a student is required to remain at home for isolation or quarantine, we don't want them to drop off and not be engaged in learning. And so, yes, we will have opportunities for them to still be engaged in and continuing their learning remotely or virtually.
Okay.
So.
Oh, that's a wonderful thing, because I can see throughout the semester that various kids are going to, various families are going to need to have, they want them on campus, but then they've got to have a 2-week break, and they aren't even necessarily sick. They just have to wait out to see what happens, as we know that we have to do.
That is very specifically lined out in our flow charts that we will be sharing with you all on tomorrow. I mean, on Friday.
It blends together.
Yeah, on Friday, whatever day we meet next.
Right, it is flowing. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, this is Julie Hedrick, District 2. Looks like everyone else's questions have been answered, but I do have a few also. So when you were first talking about the My School Remote situation, I thought it was going to be a camera in the classroom, kind of like Ernestine referred to. Well, we got that cleared up, that it's not going to be a camera in the classroom, that they're going to be a separate class with a separate teacher doing a different thing. But is that different thing going to be more a Zoom type platform where all of the students are seen as they're on, or is that going to be more like a Facebook Live type classroom where the teacher presents something and the students individually get on and watch, or maybe something different?
It could be a combination of both. So what we have in our district is Microsoft Teams. That is the technology platform that we will be using this fall. That is something that came from our task force, that initial, what we learned from our phase 1, that team told us is, we don't need all these different platforms, and it's confusing to families when they have a student who has 7 classes and each teacher is communicating differently. So Microsoft Teams will be our platform. And so, yes, that teacher is expected to be virtually teaching a classroom daily, because that's how they're going to be taking attendance, that's how they're going to be facilitating instruction. And then there could be times during that English language arts time, because we will be operating on a master schedule, much like we do in the building physically. And so there could be time during that English language arts lesson, teachers facilitates a piece of it through Teams, and then may get off and students have time to do some work time, and then they're expected to come back on. Or part of that time is teacher sets up and facilitates part of the instruction, and then students are required to get on at another time to watch a video that the teacher has pre-recorded. So it could be a combination of both, but what is required, and this is a part of, I know, KSDE's guidelines, is that daily logs must be kept and signed by students and families who choose to participate in remote learning. So a student must keep track of, or some way, must be able to document that in addition to my teacher and I being on this virtual classroom at set time, I then spent X amount of time completing the assignment. That's part of the documentation that we must have in order to be able to show that this student who is remotely receiving instruction is in school the same amount of time that our students who are physically in the building.
And I'll even add another step of accountability. It will be audited.
Okay, so if I guess I was kind of trying to think of, and what I was thinking of maybe isn't feasible now that you've said that, but I'll go ahead and speak aloud, that maybe a hybrid type option would be kind of created by families that signed into the My School Remote to get to get some teaching online and staying with a classroom, but also those folks wouldn't be on the computer in the virtual classroom all day long. They would maybe do, some participating with the classroom, some, kind of homeschooling type stuff, some parent giving them input and, educational resources. I mean, is that kind of thing feasible at all? Or if someone doesn't want to buy in 100% to My School Remote, they would just not enroll this semester, which I don't even want to verbalize because we want everyone to enroll in our schools this semester.
Well, what I can say is that a student who is enrolled in My School Remote would be expected to participate in the school day according to the schedule. And so that looks different from elementary to secondary. But for secondary, every hour, according to Tiffany's schedule, I am on with each of my teachers. My teachers are facilitating instruction. My teachers are assigning assignments. I am completing those assignments, and I'm required to upload them. At the elementary level, and as you go down to our primary grades, as much as a teacher is able to provide instruction virtually, there may be support needed by an adult there with supervision, and when the student isn't physically face-to-face with his or her teacher. One, because the student may need that support, but also that parent or that guardian is responsible for verifying that this is what the student was doing when the student was not online with the adult, with the teacher adult.
Yeah, okay, that's very good. That's very helpful.
Julie, I think that probably a parent or family that wanted that would just go for the education and imagine.
Yeah, because it's more at their own pace.
Right.
And-
And time's flexible.
Right, right. But one of the difficulties relative to relative to the eSchool Academy is then that becomes their base school. So if a family is currently attending a magnet and they want to be able to be confident that they're going to keep a space in that magnet school when they physically return to site, they need to enroll in My School Remote to be able to keep that spot.
To
guarantee that
that
they're gonna
spot.
keep that spot.
Doesn't mean that, if they go to EI, much like any other student across the district, if they wanted to apply for a magnet spot in the future, they could do so. But
to guarantee
But
it,
to guarantee-
they've got to do e-remote. Third, I don't know where I've seen this, but I've seen in some stuff that I've heard and read that there's been some encouragement that if folks do have the ability and the resources, like do have, just a single parent working in a family, and so there is someone with the child, and they do have the possibility of the child learning from home, that has somewhat been encouraged, because then it lessens the numbers at the physical site, and so that lessens the transmission. Is that something that you and/or we as a school district are encouraging? Would we like to encourage folks, or are we just totally saying do whatever is right for you?
I'm an educator, but my first job is mom.
Right.
And I would make a decision for my own children that I would believe would be the best learning experience, most comfortable for my family. And so I believe that's a decision each household will need to make for themselves, thinking about what learning style is best for their child. We may have students who during this first phase of our continuous learning plan that flourished, being able to communicate with their teacher virtually. And so a family may want to examine, is that the best option? But I can only speak for me putting on my own mom hat. I would want to make a decision that is the most comfortable for my family, that meets my children's individual learning style.
Yeah. Very good. And then fourth, I can also guess that there are people that are still out there not knowing what is best for their family, that are very confused about, well, we'd really like for them to be able to go back to school, but we're scared about the numbers that are in Wichita right now. It sounded to me like part of that soft launch is somewhat exploratory for folks, but that at the end of that by August 24th, we want a firm decision, and that firm decision is for, unless we change because of reevaluating, but that firm decision is for a full semester.
Yes, and so if you think about it, not only for our families, but from what it's going to entail of our classroom teachers, is if we are in September and we still have folks who are making those decisions, we could have increased numbers, possibly, of grade levels or content areas making a decision later on into the semester to go, let's say, my school remote. What we would need to do is move staff who were currently teaching in a physical setting and asking them to make that change, or vice versa. If we have an influx of kids who started off my remote and then going to the classroom and asking teachers to make that change. It's not that our teachers couldn't. Our teachers are some of the most resilient people around, but we did hear very clearly from our task force that unless the the climate in our community, that because of health reasons, that we needed to modify our plans, that it was difficult for them to go or think about going in and out into what we are expecting of them as far as instruction.
Yeah, that makes total sense. They're already doing a huge job extra anyway, and so that's just one more challenge. Those are all my questions. I'm gonna close my comments just re-emphasizing what Dr. Thompson has said. This is just such a huge challenge that for all of us to be in a framework of patience, flexibility, and grace is just going to be hugely important, because you guys do a huge job already, and I see that it's just going to be just even more difficult, more challenging, require more making decisions and changing them. I can see that it's going to be a huge challenge, and so patience, flexibility, and grace on the part of, I think, everyone, us, staff, teachers, parents, kids. We're just all going to have to be focused on patience, flexibility, and grace. So thank you so much for all your work. You've just done incredible planning, and it sounds like we need another comment from Ben.
Sorry, but it isn't directly related to what was presented here. It's tangentially related because it's summer food program related. We've been doing the school food pickup on Mondays and Wednesdays for my family. And the last couple of weeks, we've also received produce boxes, huge produce boxes with tons of fruits, fresh fruits and vegetables. And it's great, except for my family, we're already buying produce. And so, and it's not necessarily consistent on when it shows up, because like there wasn't one today, but there was one last week. Do we have a schedule of when those are arriving?
Yeah,
during the
and
last
I'm gonna let the experts speak, but those are not something, those are given to us, but I will let the expert put on his mask and come and share that with you.
Hello, David Paul, Nutrition Services. Great question. Thank you. We have had this offer to us now for about a month and a half, and we decided to try it out the first week at 4 of our schools, and then it was offered to us again, so we went to the other 5 schools, and then we found out that the program was going to be extended, so we just did the rotation between the first 4 and the second 5. And so our last day of distribution will be July 29th, which is also our last day of the summer food program.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Hey, Julie, Stan, sir, I have one last comment.
Okay, sure, go Stan.
Oh, you said go ahead.
Yes, go Stan.
Stan Reeser, District 4. I think one theme that I hope did not get, this is mainly for the public, I hope there's one theme that did not get lost in the shuffle in all this, is the one real silver lining in all this is going to be a real student-centered education year. This is going to be a year where the focus is going to be almost 100% on the students, and the fact that we were also going to really be emphasizing the mastery of the subjects. I think that's 2 big breakthroughs for public education that maybe we haven't always emphasized enough. I mean, no, they've always been there, but we haven't emphasized them enough. So I think it is important, and I think that kind of got lost in this meeting a little bit, but maybe Dr. Thompson could correct me if I'm wrong, but this year is really going to be about the student and the mastery of their subjects. Am I incorrect on that?
Yes. The cool part about what you're saying is that that's exactly what elementary did last year. They definitely focused on the standards, and they individualized them, whether kids mastered them or whether they didn't master them, and where they were in the process of getting to the mastery of those skills. And so, again, I think it's just, and I agree with you 100%, we really are going to really be focusing in narrow and deep. And I think that is an amazing thing for us to be able to focus in on. And our teachers and our staff are ready to be able to take that on and continue to provide excellence for our students in our school district.
Stan Reeser, District 4. Thank you. I totally agree.
Well, this is Julie Hedrick, District 2. I'm going to close the meeting until we have final comments from Dr. Thompson. But again, I just want to thank you all for the great job you're doing, all of the hard work and these very thorough plans, and all questions from the public and from parents and from teachers being answered and thought through. So I just want to thank you very much for your work. You're doing just an amazing job, and I will take closing comments from Dr. Thompson.
I am going to again go back to the slide if it's available. There you go. Stay engaged. Stay engaged. Again, we still are requesting feedback and suggestions. If you have them, please go to info@usd259.net. That is monitored 24/7, and we do take that information and we look at it, read it, and discuss it. So please, please, please continue to keep the feedback coming, and we look forward to seeing you again on Friday, where our topic is going to be about employees and the well-being and all of the protocols for all of the things that people have been asking. We will have a pretty good presentation and a thorough presentation again on Friday. So we will look forward to seeing everyone there. All minds clear? I think we are ready to adjourn. President, Vice President, you can take it from there and adjourn us.
All righty, thank you all. We will adjourn.
I move for adjournment.
Okay. And I think there's a consensus, so see you all on Friday.